The 99% are out in force here in front of the Federal Reserve Building in Washington, D.C. This Martin Luther King Day being the first day of Occupy the Dream.
We are asking for three things to take place. The first thing that we're asking for, because so many people are asking, what is Occupy standing for? Why are they in those tents? Why are they outside? Why are they setting up shelters? The first thing that we're asking for today is, in fact, campaign reform. We do not want politicians to be puppets. We don't want them working for whoever is the biggest donor. We want to remind all of our elected officials that they are for the people and by the people. You should not win just because you had the biggest treasury. You should win because you have the biggest principles. And so we stand today for corporate reform. Those of you who stand in agreement, let's occupy your voices even now. Second thing that we're asking for absolute security on Pell Grants so that all of our young people might be able to compete on a global stage with affordable education. It is horrific. It is a miscarriage of justice that there is, in fact, more student loan debt than there is credit card debt. That there are more people trying to pay off their degrees than trying to pay off flat screen TVs. And so it is incredible injustice that these young people have trained themselves, educated themselves, cannot have the opportunity to learn, to prosper, and to go forward. We want every child in America not to be left behind, but to be able to compete in computers, in science, in math, in reading, and on a global stage. So we're not just here for ourselves, but we're here for our children. If we stand for our children, would you make some noise for that, please? Thing that we're asking for is an immediate moratorium on all foreclosures. An immediate moratorium on all foreclosures. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, there are 18 million vacant houses in America. 18 million vacant houses in America that 36 months ago were occupied. That is absolutely inhumane and insane. Furthermore, in the next quarter, this first quarter of the year, between now and April, 4 million hard-working Americans are going to lose their homes. Not Mr. Gingrich, not Mr. Romney, because they're lazy, not because they're unmotivated, but because they have been robbed by an unjust system. And so we're calling for Senate to do a full exploratory committee on how predatory lending was able to go that far without ever being checked. How is it that the American government bailed out banks but would not bail out the people who hold the accounts? We, in fact, ask that there will, in fact, be no foreclosures until there is a clear understanding how these balloon mortgages were, in fact, enacted, how these people got caught in predatory lending, how they, in fact, gave homes to people who they knew did not qualify and then set them out on the street as if they were ravaged animals. Today, we stand outside of the Federal Reserve Bank. Why? Because it was this institution that gave the money to AIG. This institution gave the money to the Ford Motor Corporation. This institution gave the money to Bank of America. And so we stand for the nameless and faceless people across America who got put out of their homes, put out of their shelter, as if this is not the land of the free and the home of the brave. So Dr. King asked the question, how long? Until everybody can keep their house. If you believe that, would you raise your voice even now?
Movement that is related to the Occupy Wall Street movement is the Occupy the Dream movement. And that movement is being led by Dr. Benjamin Chavis and Dr. Jamal Bryant, who's a minister at the Empowerment Temple Church. And these two gentlemen have decided to start the movement, and they kicked it off on Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. And what they did is that they got in contact with clergy all over the country, and they encouraged the clergy to get their congregation, students, Occupy Wall Street members, to go to the Federal Reserve Building and to occupy that on Dr. King's birthday. And several different, and this occurred all over the country, including Richmond, with the movement. And just for me to backtrack a little bit, because the black church has been a crucial element in the civil rights for African Americans. So it's not a surprise that the black church actually stepped up and did something within the movement. The black tradition and structure in this country tends to be one of central leadership, one of a charismatic, iconic figure, one that kind of contrasts with the Occupy Wall Street movement, which is more of a leaderless, non-hierarchical form of organization. When the black church is a little different, because they do have leadership. So I'm not sure if that's a reason why you don't see a lot of African Americans in the group, because of the leadership structure. That's something that maybe you can answer, something maybe I need to learn a little bit more about. But as far as the movement itself, it's kind of based in the tradition of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. Chavis also he felt that if Dr. King were alive, he would be a part of the Occupy Wall Street movement. He mentioned Dr. King's Poor People's campaign that he had, support the rights for poor people. It became less of a black thing and more of a class thing, more of a national thing, because all races are affected by poverty, all races are affected by poor schools, all races are affected by healthcare. So he wanted to make the issue more global, more broader. And with the vision of economic justice and economic equality, like I said, they had the National Action Day, and the one in Richmond was held in Kanawha Plaza, where Occupy Wall Street was. So it was a very critical moment, very interesting, how things kind of came 360. And like I said, it was led by Dr. Lance Watson, who was the pastor of St. Paul's Baptist Church in Richmond. And there were hundreds of people who came out, Occupy Richmond members, congregation members, students, community members, in support of Dr. King and in support of the Occupy the Dream movement. And the day included speeches and prayers. Dr. Watson, along with Sheila Bell, had encouraged blacks to take out $15 million from their banks and encourage them to invest them in black banks. Maggie Walker, who was a very big figure in Richmond, she started her own bank. I think it was Penny Savings and Loans, which they have a historical site here, and I encourage you all to come see it. And the black businesses, black entrepreneurship, is something that we had going in the 60s and the 50s, and it's something that we're kind of losing now. But we do encourage to support black business. I think that's a critical element of our community, is controlling our resource, controlling businesses, having our own businesses, having self-determination. I think it's crucial. As far as just what I'm seeing and what I've been reading, about black people's opinions with the Occupy movement, it seems to be a lot of kind of pessimism. It seems to be people looking at this movement as being a white movement and not really looking at it as being a movement for, all people. I think classism is becoming a much more crucial issue, and even more crucial than racism now, because money doesn't discriminate. Money doesn't, it's not racist. It's more about people with the haves and the have-nots. And Herman Cain is case in point. So, with that, and you also hear, black people saying that, that we've been marching and doing all of this stuff for years and years and nothing's changing. And you kind of hear that sense of learned helplessness. Just that sense of pessimism, that sense of that, we've been beat down. We just tired, sick and tired of being sick and tired. And there was an American psychologist named Martin Seligman who did an experiment with 3 dogs. And, the third dog in the group was a dog that was receiving electrical shocks, and the dog couldn't stop the electrical shocks. The first dog was tied to a harness and eventually let go. And the second dog, he was being electrically shocked, but he had the opportunity to use a lever to control the shocks. The dog that couldn't control the shocks, he became depressed. And what ended up happening is that he had a sense of learned helplessness. He felt like he couldn't do anything to control his condition, that he was at the pretty much at the will of his condition. He couldn't do anything about it, so he kind of just gave up. And I kind of feel like now, even though we have been marching, this has Martin Luther King's dream is still not realized by a lot of people in our community, that we can't give up. And within that experiment, they did it on 150 dogs. 2/3 of those dogs, developed learned helplessness. 1/3 of those dogs learned how to adapt, became resilient, and were able to thrive despite their circumstance. And we have to be those dogs that, not comparing us to animals, but we have to be the ones that, are resilient. We have to, our circumstances, we can't allow them to dictate, how we behave, dictate, whether or not, we'll be able to function, or whether or not we'll be able to thrive and, make ends meet. Because we're missing a great opportunity with the Occupy movement and other movements going on right now, because the climate is kind of ripe with revolution, ripe with change, ripe with people who want to make changes in their lives and in the community. So